I'm Amber. I'm 29 years old, and just last month I inherited my grandfather's entire estate worth more than $2 million. The day after his funeral, my mother, Patricia, showed up at my door, cold and commanding, and demanded I sign it over to her, just like that. No emotion, no empathy. When I refused, all hell broke loose. This morning I got a text from her, one line. Important family meeting, be there. No pleasantries, no explanation, just a command. Now here I am, standing in the foyer of my childhood home. My palms are sweating, heart thudding in my chest. I look around and it feels like walking into a trap. My mother, my siblings, my stepfather Craig, and two men in tailored suits sitting on the couch like hired guns. My mother smiles like she's hosting brunch. Amber, she says, her voice sugary and fake. Meet our lawyers. I wasn't prepared. Not for this, not today. But I also wasn't about to fold. Let me back up. My grandfather Harold was more than just family. He was everything. A mentor, a role model, my biggest supporter. While most kids had pop stars on their walls, I had a framed photo of Grandpa in front of his first hardware store. He built everything from the ground up, started with one store, and turned it into a chain across 3 states. He always said, "Nothing worth having comes easy, Amber." His voice had that firm but kind tone that made you sit up straighter. My mother never had that. Not the grit, not the gratitude. Growing up, I watched her burn through money like it was air. Designer handbags, luxury cars, spa trips. She lived like a millionaire, even when we were swimming in debt. Craig, her second husband, an enabler, was just as bad. Every time Grandpa bailed her out, she'd find a way to spend more. And every time she ran out, she'd cry and scream and manipulate her way back into Grandpa's wallet. Meanwhile, Grandpa took a special interest in me. When I was 13, he started bringing me to the store every Saturday. We'd go over inventory reports and talk about profit margins like it was game night. He showed me what it meant to build something and to take care of the people who helped you do it. "You've got a sharp eye," he told me once after I spotted a miscalculation in supplier invoices. "That's rare. Most people don't look. You do." I didn't realize it then, but those weekends were training. He was grooming me for something bigger. When I told him I wanted to study business in college, he beamed. "Smart girl. Education is the one thing nobody can take from you." He offered to pay my tuition, but my mom got to him first. She called him daily, guilt-tripped him about their mortgage, claimed Rachel needed emergency dental work, said Jason's learning disability meant he needed a special school and a new car. Suddenly, the money for my education became family funds. So I took out loans and worked part-time at a bookstore. Still, Grandpa would show up pretending to browse the business section and slip me envelopes of cash. Just between us, he'd whisper, "Don't tell your mother." As his health declined, our conversations got deeper, more serious. He told me stories I'd never heard about, how my mother stole from him as a teenager, forged his signature, even drained a savings account meant for her college education to buy a sports car. "I failed her somehow," he said once in the hospital. "Maybe I gave her too much, or not enough of what really mattered." He looked me straight in the eye. "But you turned out just right." It wrecked me when he died. I felt like someone had turned the lights off in my world. 2 weeks after the funeral, the will was read. We gathered in Mr. Peterson's office. My mother showed up in designer black sunglasses on indoors like she was an Oscar widow. Rachel and Jason flanked her. Craig hovered behind. I sat across the table, alone. Mr. Peterson began reading. Small bequests to extended relatives, a generous pension for the housekeeper, charitable donations, all expected. And then, to my granddaughter, Amber Nicole Matthews, I leave the remainder of my estate, including business holdings, investment portfolios, real estate properties, and all personal effects not otherwise designated. Silence. I froze. And then the sunglasses came off. "This is a mistake," my mother said. Cold, furious. "There's no mistake," Mr. Peterson replied calmly. "Your father was very clear." "You're lying," she snapped. "Read it again. Read it again." He did, word for word. You manipulated him, she hissed at me. You got in his head when he was sick, vulnerable. You twisted this. Mom, please. Don't mom me. You think this is fair after everything I've done for this family. Rachel jumped in tears, already welling. He loved us all equally, Amber. Jason stayed silent. Mr. Peterson finally interrupted. Mr. Matthews was of sound mind. He updated this will 6 months ago. He knew exactly what he was doing. But my mother wouldn't hear it. She accused me of exploiting his illness, said I was heartless, said I was greedy. Craig muttered something about family loyalty. Rachel cried louder, and I just sat there, stunned, the weight of my grandfather's decision crashing down on me. Outside in the parking lot, my mom cornered me. This is simple, she said. Transfer everything to me. I'll distribute it fairly. Her voice was calm, calculated, dangerous. I need time to think. What's there to think about? It's family money. Amber, it belongs to all of us. No, I said, heart pounding. It's what Grandpa wanted. Her smile vanished. Her tone turned ice cold. You were just a distraction in his old age, she sneered, not his legacy. The next few days were a storm. Texts, calls. Rachel said I was tearing the family apart. Craig said I was selfish. Even family friends chimed in. Jason showed up at my apartment looking shell-shocked. She's not going to let this go, he warned. She's obsessed. He wasn't wrong. 1 week later, I got the text. Important family meeting. Be there. What I walked into next was more than a meeting. It was an ambush. The moment I stepped into my childhood home, I knew it wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a showdown. The curtains were drawn. The air was thick with tension, and every single person in that room was already in place, like actors waiting for the lead to walk on stage. Rachel and Jason sat stiffly on the couch. Craig was leaning against the fireplace, arms crossed, his stare as hostile as ever. My mother sat center stage, in the high-back chair she always claimed during family holidays, the throne we used to joke. Only it wasn't funny now. And then there were the two men I hadn't seen before, middle-aged, polished in suits, too nice to be casual guests. One of them nodded at me, trying to look warm. It came off rehearsed. Amber, my mother said, gesturing dramatically. This is Mr. Wilson and Mr. Daniels. They're here to help us resolve this situation, peacefully. I didn't respond. I walked in slowly, clutching my leather portfolio tight. I had a feeling I'd need it. Please, she continued, gesturing to a single chair set directly across from the group. Isolated, exposed. Sit. I sat. I didn't smile. I didn't say hello. I simply looked at the two men, then back at my mother. What's this about? We're here, Mr. Wilson began, because your family is concerned. Managing a substantial estate at your age can be well overwhelming. I manage investment portfolios and vendor accounts for a living, I said. So no, it's not. Mr. Daniels jumped in, still smiling. It's not a question of ability, Amber. It's about family unity. Your grandfather's estate was left to me. I finished for him. Clearly, legally, willfully. That's not the point, my mother snapped. The point is he never intended for one person to have everything. You twisted things, took advantage of him. No, I didn't. Then why not prove it? Rachel said, her voice quivering, just enough to sound rehearsed, but believable. Sign over control to Mom. She'll distribute everything fairly. Craig added, we've already had some paperwork prepared, just to make things easier. That's when Mr. Wilson pulled out a folder and placed it on the coffee table in front of me. We've drafted an agreement that would transfer all holdings to your mother, he said. You'd retain a portion, say 20%. Everyone gets what they deserve. No legal mess. I stared at the folder. I didn't touch it. Let me get this straight, I said. You want me to hand over everything Grandpa left me, including the business's investments, properties, and in return, I keep 20% and the hope that you'll all play fair. My mother's smile tightened. It's not about playing fair. It's about correcting a mistake. There was no mistake. He was sick, Rachel said. He was sound of mind, I said. The will was updated 6 months before he passed. He was sharper than anyone here. Amber, Mr. Daniels said, carefully contesting this will would be messy, but possible. The accusation would be undue influence, and courts do take that seriously. And what undue influence are you suggesting? You spent a lot of time alone with him, he replied. Some might interpret that as opportunistic. My jaw clenched. Craig stepped forward, arms still crossed. We don't want to do this the hard way, but we will if we have to. I opened my portfolio and placed it in my lap without saying a word. Look, my mother said, her voice turning that faux soothing tone she always used when trying to manipulate me. We're just trying to keep this from tearing the family apart. Sign the agreement. Let's move on. Do you know what this is? I asked, holding up a photo. Rachel squinted. Craig leaned closer. This is from Mom's Instagram, the day she was in Cancun last year. The caption, living my best life, #sunset, cruise, #grateful. That was the same day she told Grandpa she needed $20,000 for Rachel's emergency dental surgery. My mother's smile disappeared. You're digging through old photos now, she said sharply. No, I'm matching them to the records Grandpa kept in his journal. I pulled out more papers. Every single time one of you lied to him for money, he documented it. Mr. Wilson and Mr. Daniels suddenly looked uncomfortable. May 8th, $20,000 for an emergency that didn't exist. January 15th, $30,000, supposedly for Jason's medical bills. Jason, were you sick that week? Jason shook his head. I was at school. Finals week. And here's the kicker, I said, sliding another page across the table. A photo of Mom on a birthday cruise, funded by that $30K. My mother's face darkened. You little snake. Grandpa knew everything, I said calmly. He left me this estate because of this pattern, because he knew I wouldn't let it continue. You think you're better than us, Rachel shouted, suddenly standing. You were just his pet project. You manipulated him. No, I said. He saw what was coming, and he trusted me to stop it. My mother stood now too, fists clenched at her sides. We are your family. That money was supposed to be ours. No, I said. It was his. And he decided. You don't get to rewrite that just because you don't like the outcome. Then we'll take you to court. Craig snapped. We'll challenge everything. Go ahead, I replied, but know this. I have the will. I have the journal. I have a recorded letter from Grandpa himself, and I have a lawyer sitting in her car down the street ready to walk in the moment I text her. That changed the air instantly. The two men in suits exchanged glances. Mr. Daniels, I added, you might want to reconsider your involvement. You're presenting yourself as legal counsel and applying pressure to sign documents under questionable pretenses. That's not going to look good in front of a judge. My mother opened her mouth, but no words came. Jason stood up and moved beside me. I'm leaving, he said, with Amber. Craig started toward him, but I held up my phone. This entire conversation, I said, has been recorded. Any threats, any harassment, I've got it all. Craig stopped, silent. I looked around at the people I had once called family and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. I'm done, I said. This ends today. And with Jason beside me, I walked out the door. Jason and I didn't speak until we were a few blocks away from the house. The air in the car was thick, heavy, with everything we didn't say back there. I could see his hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel. That was, he finally muttered, insane. Yeah, I said, voice low, but not surprising. He sighed. I knew Mom had issues with money, but I didn't realize it was this bad, or that she'd drag in lawyers to try to scare you into giving it all up. I turned to him. She wasn't just trying to scare me. She was trying to erase Grandpa's decision, rewrite his legacy. Jason nodded, eyes focused on the road. You did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like a win, but you stood your ground. It didn't feel like a win, I said honestly. It felt like surviving a war. We got to my apartment and Jason followed me up. I made coffee while he paced nervously by the window. I think I'm going to stay at a friend's for a while, he said. I can't go back there tonight. You don't have to explain, I said gently. No judgment. He looked at me for a long moment. You really think they'll try to take you to court? I sipped my coffee. If they think there's money to be squeezed, yeah. But I have Grandpa's journal, the video, the updated will. Let them try. Jason nodded slowly, then leaned back on the couch. I don't know how you held it together in there. Rachel was full-on meltdown mode. I've had years to practice, I said. I've been holding it together since I was 15, and Mom told me Grandpa owed her for raising me. That hit Jason hard. He looked at me eyes wide. She said that. I nodded, more than once. Jason went quiet for a long time. Then I always thought she treated you differently, but I figured I was just imagining it. You weren't. There was a silence between us. Not awkward, just heavy. I'm sorry, he said finally, for not standing up for you sooner. You stood up today, I said. That's what matters. He stayed the night, slept on the couch like we were kids at a sleepover. I made pancakes in the morning, and for the first time in weeks, there was peace in my kitchen. But the peace didn't last long. 2 days later, I got the letter. It was hand-delivered in a sleek white envelope, no postage, just slid under my door. In the matter of the estate of Harold Matthews. They were suing me. Undue influence. Exploitation. Demanding the court invalidate the will and place the estate into temporary conservatorship. I read it 3 times, then dropped the papers on the counter. It was happening. The war wasn't over. I called my attorney, Ms. Gaines, a brilliant woman I had on standby ever since Grandpa's passing, because honestly, I'd expected something like this. She read the letter silently, on speakerphone, then said, "They're bluffing, but they're serious. Can they win? Unlikely, but they'll try to drag you through hell just to force a settlement." I exhaled long and slow. So what do? We fight. Over the next 2 weeks, Ms. Gaines built a case stronger than concrete. She gathered documents, timelines, testimony. Jason agreed to submit a statement. Even Grandpa's old accountant wrote a letter confirming that he had expressed concern about his daughter misusing family funds. Meanwhile, my mother started waging war in public. She posted on Facebook, "Some people will twist an old man's love into personal gain. Family should mean loyalty, not greed." The comments poured in sympathy, outrage, anger. And of course, no one knew the full story, only what she wanted them to hear. My inbox flooded with messages. Why are you doing this to your own mother? That inheritance belongs to the family. I hope you're happy destroying everything. I stayed quiet online, but inside I was boiling. That was when Rachel posted her version of the story, sobbing on Instagram Live, claiming I manipulated Grandpa into cutting them all off, that I turned him against the family during his weakest time, that I was never really one of them, and maybe that part was true, because I never was like them. I didn't lie. I didn't manipulate. I didn't cheat my way into comfort. I worked. While they were out spending Grandpa's generosity on luxury spa days and fake emergencies, I was running inventory reports and learning how to scale retail businesses. Still, it hurt. The public humiliation, the betrayal. Then one day, a message came from an account I didn't recognize. No subject, no greeting, just one sentence. I have proof they forged signatures before. My heart stopped. Attached were scanned documents checks from years ago, signed in Grandpa's name, but not in his handwriting. Side by side, I could tell. They didn't match, and there were 6 of them, tens of thousands of dollars total. My hands trembled as I read the email again. The sender's name, Clara Matthews, my mother's sister, my aunt. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. I stared at the email for at least 5 straight minutes. Clara Matthews, the sister my mother never mentioned unless she was spitting venom, the black sheep of the family, or so I'd been told, bitter, jealous, ungrateful. According to Mom, Clara had been cut off years ago for stealing from Grandpa, but now she was emailing me with receipts. I responded cautiously. "Hi, Clara. This is Amber. I saw your message and the attached files. Can we talk?" She replied almost instantly. "Of course. I've been waiting for you to reach out for years." We scheduled a call that night. I was nervous. What if she had her own angle? What if she wanted a piece of the estate? What if this was just more family mess? But when she picked up, her voice wasn't what I expected. It wasn't sharp or bitter. It was tired, worn. "Amber," she said, "you sound just like your grandfather." I sat down on the couch, heart thudding. "Clara, why are you helping me?" She let out a slow breath. "Because I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of Patricia's fury. And because I owe your grandfather more than I ever got to say." Over the next hour, she walked me through everything. Years ago, Clara and Grandpa had a falling out. She'd tried to start a business, asked for a loan, and promised to repay it. But my mother, already elbowing for control, told everyone Clara had forged a check and stolen from him. "That wasn't true," Clara said. "He gave me that money. I had the note. But your mom convinced him I was lying. And then," Clara went quiet, "moved to another state, cut off contact. But last year," she continued, "your grandfather called me. Out of the blue. He said he'd finally realized the truth, that Patricia had manipulated him for decades. He apologized. Tears sprang to my eyes. He never told me that. He didn't want to burden you," Clara said gently. "He just wanted to make things right. He told me he was changing the will, that you were the only one he trusted to protect his legacy." I sat there stunned, angry, heartbroken. "And those documents you sent me," I asked. "Proof that she's done this before," she said. "Forged checks, coerced signatures." I recognized her handwriting. She signed his name on a loan application once. I took photos. Never thought I'd need them until I saw Rachel's little Instagram meltdown. We both laughed, a bitter, exhausted kind of laugh. "I'll testify if you need me," she added. "I don't want anything, just justice." I thanked her from the bottom of my heart. The next morning, I forwarded everything to Ms. Gaines. She called me within minutes. "This is a game changer," she said. "This isn't just about protecting your inheritance anymore. This is fraud. Documented. If we file this with the court, it flips the entire case." "Do it," I said. And just like that, the tide began to turn. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Depositions, paperwork, media spin. But with Clara's documents, Jason's statement, Grandpa's journal, and the video message he'd recorded before his passing, our case became a wall they couldn't climb. Then came the day of the preliminary hearing. We all showed up at the courthouse, my mother in full black like she was attending another funeral, Rachel in oversized sunglasses, Craig with a smug, forced smile. Jason sat beside me. I brought Clara. When my mother saw her, her face went white. "You don't belong here," she hissed. Clara smiled calmly. "Neither do forged documents." Inside the courtroom, their lawyer tried to spin the same tired story Amber manipulated. An old man took advantage of his illness, twisted his love. But our team countered with precision. We submitted the will, the journal, the video, the forged documents. We laid out timelines. We exposed the false emergencies, the misappropriated funds, the pattern of deceit. When Clara took the stand, she didn't falter. She told the truth, clearly, calmly, decisively. And when it was over, the judge looked at Patricia like he could see right through her. "I'm inclined to dismiss this case," he said. "Not only is there insufficient evidence of undue influence, but the defense has provided substantial proof of long-standing financial misconduct by the plaintiffs." He paused. "Any further attempts to contest this will may be considered harassment." The gavel came down. It was over. My mother's face collapsed, not with tears, but with rage. Rachel looked stunned. Craig just shook his head and walked out. Outside the courthouse, Clara put a hand on my shoulder. "You did what I couldn't," she said. "You stood up and ended the cycle." I hugged her tightly. We did it together. Jason joined us, smiling faintly. Thank God for paper trails and stubborn women. We laughed genuine laughter this time. That night, I sat alone on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker below. The storm had passed. I still had scars, still had grief. But I also had peace. And I had Grandpa's legacy intact, protected, and finally, mine. 2 weeks after the court hearing, I got a letter. Not from my mother, not from Rachel, not even from their attorney. It was from Grandpa. The envelope was yellowed and soft around the edges with my name written in his old cursive handwriting, Amber Nicole Matthews. It had been tucked inside a safe deposit box that my lawyer helped me access once the estate was fully transferred. Along with it were a few photos, an old keychain from the first store he ever opened, and a handwritten note. I sat on the floor of my apartment, the letter trembling in my hands as I unfolded it. My Amber, if you're reading this, it means things unfolded just like I thought they might. And I hate that I was right. I wish I could say I was proud of everyone, that the family I built turned out stronger than the chaos I sometimes feel responsible for. But the truth is, I made mistakes. I bailed them out too many times. I said yes when I should have said no. And I protected them when I should have let them fall. But not with you. With you, I finally got it right. You were always watching, always learning, always asking the questions nobody else dared to ask. That's how I knew when the time came you'd do the hard thing, the right thing, even if it hurt. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better from them while I was alive. But I see you now even from wherever I am. I see you standing tall, and I am so damn proud of the woman you've become. Use what I've built, grow it, share it if you choose, but never out of guilt, only out of freedom. And remember, blood doesn't define family. Love does. Love always, Grandpa. I cried harder than I had at his funeral. There was something about hearing his voice in those words that cut through every bruise this fight had left on me. He knew. He always knew. That weekend, I flew out to visit the flagship store, Harold's Hardware, the original one he opened back in the 70s, with a second-hand sign and a cash drawer made out of a cigar box. The current manager, a kind older woman named Denise, had worked there since before I was born. She walked me through the aisles like I was 5 years old again. "It hasn't changed much," she said, running her hand along one of the old wooden counters. "Your granddad refused to modernize the front, said it reminded him where he started." I love that I said, smiling. In the back office, there was still an old corkboard covered in faded photos, one of me, about 11 years old, holding a clipboard and grinning like I'd just closed $1 million deal. Grandpa had labeled it in Sharpie, my future CEO. I sat in that dusty office for an hour, thinking, planning, dreaming. That's when the idea struck. What if I turned part of Grandpa's legacy into something even bigger? Not just stores, but a foundation, a mentorship program for young women who had no one fighting in their corner, who grew up being told they weren't good enough or smart enough or worthy enough to lead. Girls like me. I started drafting the proposal that night on the flight back home. By the time I landed, I had a name, the Legacy Line, a mentorship pipeline for young women in business trades and entrepreneurship funded by a portion of the estate with scholarships, training, and a built-in network of mentors and support. I ran it by Clara first. She cried when I told her. Harold would have loved that, she said. He always said the world needed more women who know their worth. Within 3 months, the foundation was real. Registered, funded, active. We launched a pilot program in 3 states, Florida, Ohio, and Texas, with applications pouring in. Young women with big dreams, rough pasts, and hearts full of fire. Some were single moms. Some were fresh out of foster care. Some were just like I had been, alone, underappreciated, and underestimated. I read every single application. I cried at most of them. But what surprised me the most, Jason asked to be involved. I want to help, he said. I've seen what happens when women in our family are silenced. I want to be part of undoing that. And he meant it. He started speaking at workshops, mentoring on the side, helping with logistics, and even fundraising. Rachel didn't reach out. Neither did my mother. But that was fine. For the first time, I wasn't checking my phone, hoping to hear from people who had hurt me. I wasn't waiting to be accepted into a family that had always kept me on the outside. I was building something new. I bought a house near the beach, modest, sunlit, peaceful. Not the mansion my mother would have blown her share on. Just enough space to breathe, to build, to heal. Sometimes I'd sit on the back porch, coffee in hand, watching the waves roll in, wondering what Grandpa would say if he could see me now. And in those moments, I could almost hear his voice. Told you, kiddo. You've got the sharpest eyes in the room. A year after everything settled, I stood on a small stage in a high school auditorium in Tampa. Behind me, a simple banner read, Legacy Line Annual Summit Building, What's Ours? The room was filled with over 200 young women, some just 16 or 17, others in their 20s, some holding babies on their hips, some in business suits, others in t-shirts and jeans. But all of them had that same determined light in their eyes. They weren't just here to listen, they were here to build. I took a breath, adjusted the mic, and began. I want to tell you a story, I said, about a man who built an empire out of paint cans and garden hoses, and about the granddaughter he left it to, not because she was the most talented or the most experienced, but because she was the one who listened. They leaned in. I told them about Grandpa, about Harold's Hardware, about Saturdays spent reviewing invoices instead of going to the mall, about rejection, betrayal, and being called a mistake by the people who should have loved me the most. And then I told them about this moment, right now, this room, this foundation, this network. You are sitting inside the legacy of one man's belief in a girl who everyone else dismissed, and it's not just mine anymore, it's yours. The room erupted in applause, but more than the clapping, I saw tears, nods, girls mouthing thank you with trembling lips. That night, I sat backstage exhausted and exhilarated. Jason found me with 2 mugs of hot tea. You killed it, he said, handing me one. Like I thought half the room was about to start chanting your name. I laughed. Please, I almost cried halfway through. Yeah, he said, settling into a chair beside me. But they needed to see that. The real you, not just the polished version. I looked down at my mug. You think Mom watched it? He hesitated. Probably.
And
Jason shrugged. Who knows? She'll either deny everything or blame you for turning Grandpa's name into a charity. I smiled, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. She'll never change, will she? No, he said softly, but you did. That hit me hard. He was right. For so long, I thought justice would look like revenge. Public takedowns, courtroom gasps, tears from the people who hurt me. But now, a different version of justice was unfolding in front of me every day, quieter but deeper. Justice that looked like generational change, like opportunity passed down instead of trauma, like healing instead of headlines. In December, I got a letter from Clara. Inside, it was a photo of Grandpa, one I'd never seen before. He was standing in front of a new store ribbon in hand, grinning like a kid. On the back, she'd written, "This was the day he said someday Amber will stand where I am." I cried again. A few weeks later, I hosted a Legacy Line alumni dinner. Dozens of women came back from their first year in the program. One had opened a bakery, one had launched a digital marketing agency, and one, only 18, had just landed a full scholarship to a top university. They all hugged me like we were family, real family. As we stood in a circle, under string lights, glasses raised, someone said, "To Amber." I shook my head. No, to us, to every girl who was told she was too small, too loud, too much, to every dream that didn't fit in the box someone else made for us. They clinked glasses, laughed, cheered. And I looked around at the faces lit up with joy and grit and fire, and I knew this was the real inheritance. Not the money, not the property, not even the business. This, a world my grandfather made space for me to build, a future I refused to hand over out of guilt, and a legacy that for the first time felt truly mine. Spring came early that year. The Florida breeze carried the scent of orange blossoms through my open windows, and for once, life felt light. Not easy, not perfect, but steady. I'd spent so long clawing my way out of that old narrative, being the unwanted daughter, the unchosen one, the backup plan. And now I didn't just feel free from it. I felt reborn. One morning, I stood in my kitchen, sipping coffee, barefoot sunlight pouring across the hardwood floor. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. Hello. There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in over a year. "Amber, it's your mother." I didn't say anything. I was told by one of Rachel's friends that you've started some kind of charity, a long beat. It's a foundation, I said, for young women, entrepreneurship, trades education. Things you once told me were a waste of time. There was another pause. She cleared her throat. I saw the article in the Herald, she said. You were on the front page. She didn't sound angry. She sounded small. For the first time in my life, Patricia Matthews sounded unsure. I didn't call to fight, she said. I wanted to say that maybe I didn't understand everything Grandpa saw in you, but I see it now. I blinked. Was I dreaming? I see how far you've come, she continued, and maybe I was wrong. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from her. Not a full one, not clean or satisfying, but real. Still, I didn't soften, not yet. You tried to take everything from me, I said. Not just money, legacy, my name, my peace. I know, she whispered, and I have to live with that. I didn't forgive her. Not on that call, maybe not ever. But I also didn't hang up. We talked for 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. She didn't ask for anything. No money, no handouts, not even a chance to come visit. She just talked, like she was tired, like she was finally facing the silence she'd created around herself. After we hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat still and let the peace settle. Later that week, Jason came by for dinner. We grilled on the back patio, barefoot music, lo, a bottle of red wine open between us. He had big news. He'd been offered a position at a nonprofit incubator helping scale small businesses in underserved communities. He was taking it. I want to use what I've learned, he said. Watching you working with Legacy Line, it changed how I see everything. I was proud, genuinely proud. You're building your own legacy, I told him. He grinned. Takes one to know one. Before he left, he pulled something out of his backpack. I was cleaning out Mom's storage unit, found this tucked in a box of Grandpa's old things. It was a photo, one I'd never seen before. Me and Grandpa sitting at the edge of a dock, feet dangling over the water. I must have been 8 or 9. He had one arm around my shoulders, the other pointing at something in the distance. On the back he'd written, "Teach her to look forward. The view is always better ahead." I held that photo for a long time after Jason left. That night, I placed it on my desk, right beside the plaque from the mayor recognizing Legacy Line's impact. And the first dollar earned by the newest business in our network, a bakery called Bright Crumb, owned by a 20-year-old who'd once been told she'd never make it past community college. The past didn't vanish. The pain didn't disappear, but it no longer defined me. My grandfather had seen the future in me, and now I was building one for myself, for others, for the girls who were still looking for a way forward. I didn't just survive my family's betrayal. I transformed it, and in doing so, I created something they never could have imagined, a life of my own making, a legacy that no one could steal. A year later, I stood in the very same courtroom where my family once tried to take everything from me. Only this time I wasn't here to defend myself. I was here to give something away. The judge smiled as he signed the final documents paperwork that would officially transfer ownership of the old Herald's Hardware flagship building into the name of the Legacy Line Foundation. The place where my grandfather started everything would now be the national headquarters of a movement that had already helped over 1,000 women launch careers, start businesses, and break cycles that once held them back. "This is a beautiful full-circle moment," the judge said. I nodded. It's what he would have wanted. Outside, the press was waiting. Local outlets, one national feature, a few former Legacy Line graduates holding signs and cheering as I cut the ribbon with Jason Clara and Denise, the original store manager, by my side. Even the mayor was there. But the person I kept scanning the crowd for wasn't. My mother hadn't come. And that was okay. I had invited her, not because I expected her to say yes, but because part of healing is letting go of the scoreboard. I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need her apology, because I'd built something real, something she never could take from me. After the ceremony, I walked through the newly renovated space. What used to be dusty wooden aisles of screws and paintbrushes was now a co-working space, a mentorship center, a startup lab, and a financial literacy classroom. One wall was covered in photos. Grandpa, in front of his first store. Me at age 13 with a calculator and a broken pencil. Clara in her early 20s, standing beside a young Harold, both grinning with sunburned cheeks. And in the center of it all, one large frame with a quote in bold letters. Teach her to look forward. The view is always better ahead. The room was quiet for a moment as the crowd filtered out and I stood there alone. That quote wasn't just a motto. It was the story of my life. Every time they told me I wasn't enough, I kept looking forward. Every time they tried to break me, I looked ahead. Every time they told me family meant obedience instead of respect, I chose a different path. That path led me here. To peace, to purpose, to something bigger than revenge. Later that night, I got a message from Rachel. It was just a few lines. I've been watching what you're doing. I was wrong about you, about Grandpa, about everything. I don't expect anything from you, but I wanted you to know I see it now, and I'm sorry. I stared at the screen, unsure what to feel. But I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I smiled, because the truth was, this wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. It was about every woman who had been underestimated, overlooked, dismissed. It was about turning pain into purpose, trauma into transformation. It was about honoring a man who believed in me when no one else did, and building something no one could tear down. Not with lawsuits, not with lies, not with guilt, because I was no longer the girl begging for a seat at the family table. I had built my own table, and it had room for every woman who had ever been told to sit down and stay small. This was my story, and it was just the beginning.